The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. We will now not sing an anthem, and instead listen with full heart and all attention to this amazing gospel. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. There they gave a dinner for him. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those at table with him. Mary took a pound of costly perfume made of pure nard, anointed Jesus' feet, and wiped them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Judas Iscariot, one of the disciples, the one who was to betray him, said, "Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. He kept the common purse and used to steal what was put into it. Jesus said, "Leave her alone. She bought it so that she might keep it for the day of my burial. You will always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me." This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Lord.
So we keep Caesar
See that?
because he's got the mic. Okay.
My name is David McPhee, and I'm going to tell you the whole story of my life in about 45 seconds. I have to, because then you'll understand why this gospel is so very important to me. Went to seminary when I was 15. I came from a tribal, ethnic, Roman Catholic background where we were still a minority, and the world was divided into 2 classes of people: Catholics and non-Catholics. That's it. Any other distinction is not important. So I went into the seminary all glorious and adolescent and ready to teach and love and do all the wonderful things that my pastor did. And I quickly became somewhat disillusioned because everything was so strict and rigid, and it was about conformity and limitation, and I needed to be moderate and sensible and certain. My father was a Scottish accountant, the worst possible combination. And the worst sin for him was extravagance. And this passage comforted me so much. Okay, what's the passage? Okay, he's got 6 days left to live. What are you going to do if you have 6 days left to live? Well, he'd been working the week before out in ministry, parables to the religious teachers about the prodigal father. More about that later. He decided to go hang out with his friends a couple miles from Jerusalem, Bethany. He sat down. Who cares if it was Simon the leper or whoever house it was? He was with Lazarus, just raised him from the dead shortly before. Mary the extravagant one, and Martha, who was in the kitchen too much and complained about it a bit, although she loved in her own way too. And it's his final week. So that's where he goes. Got some disciples with him. We know Judas was there, probably a few others. So they're sitting there reclining at table. They reclined, they didn't sit in chairs. I try to imagine this reclining thing from medieval paintings. But anyway, hard to imagine. But Mary bursts into the room. She's got what was probably a small alabaster box full of spiked nard probably from India or Persia, because they didn't have it there. And so it's really expensive. And then she runs over to Jesus, and then she starts rubbing this stuff into his feet. Ancient Israelites were funny about feet, just like Thai people, okay? So this was really a big deal, okay? So she rubs it into her feet, and then suddenly the whole house is completely aromatic. And if you've never smelled nard, It's not floral or anything like that. It's very earthy. You know, it's one of those really earthy, sensual kind of things that that make you pay attention and sit up and take notice. So everything smelled great. I looked it up. My final estimate after half an hour in line was worth about 6,000 baht. So Judas says, "Excuse me, we live in a poor country, there are a lot of poor people here. Why is Mary totally wasting, we're sitting here wasting time, first of all, and now she's wasting 300 denarii worth of the stuff. Pointless, right?" Now, I've sat in a lot of church councils because I did continue in the seminary and became a priest and then a hospital priest and then a pastor and then a professor. But in the meantime, I learned that most church councils I sat in, including myself, would say, "Well, it doesn't seem very practical. That doesn't seem very balanced. Shouldn't we at least be at the soup kitchen or something like that? What are we doing? Why are we in church at all?" Sometimes I would say, "Why aren't we out there doing social justice instead of smelling incense and listening to songs?" Big mistake in my early years. So the reason this kind of saved me, this passage and a few others like it, was it was the 60s, okay? And I had gone to the major seminary thinking about the Berrigan brothers and trying to stop the war in Vietnam and living Martin Luther King like a demigod and just gone to the moon and the Tet Offensive, way too young, all of you remember that, but this is all going on. And I'm going to go out, now I'm going to save the world in a very different way, outside the church, outside the churches, and preach the gospel of social justice and register voters and march for civil rights and all this kind of stuff. Okay, well, the church I was in was just into the Second Vatican Council and those reforms, which went the other way, and so we got flowing vestments and we got the Mass in English, but the social justice thing didn't really come about very much. It's happening in Africa now to some extent, but that church is so conservative and else. So I was there, and I'd say, "Can I stay in this church? Can I stay in this church?" Because it's limiting. It's not liberating. It's limiting. They talk about liberation of the poor, but not much is going on in that department. So this passage that I read very differently from many times in that chapter career of ministry saved me because it was everything that wasn't moderate and balanced and carefully planned and limiting, but it was outrageously, extravagantly giving in its love and its sensuality and its humanness and all the rest. This passage, perhaps as many in John's any of the Gospels. Okay, the Easter narrative, of course, we have to go there because it's always and ultimately about Easter. If Easter's a lie, we should disregard. But this, at a very deep personal level, in terms of my spirituality, made things different. It's this crazy, extravagant love. I mean, Isaiah was talking about it. Paul is a little ambivalent, he's a lot of words in that, but some great actions, but, the church is too much Paul and that Jesus enough. I'm over 75, so I can say that now. I wish we're more the church of Jesus and less the church of Paul. Anyway, okay, so I don't want to go on too long here, but I thought, what can I think of the examples of extravagant love? Well, Father Ian. Father Ian is a fabulous preacher, as you know. And he gave up his pulpit for the whole season. So amateurs like me can come and test their wings. That's generous. When I was a regular preacher, I didn't want to give up my pulpit. So I see that as an act of extravagant love. Okay, since I'm over 75, I can tell you a story that's just a little, perhaps, crude. I was 16, and I was at the St. Paul Seminary, and I was feeling very oppressed, okay? I had to not only control my actions, but my thoughts. There were so many thoughts that were sins. Anyway, so I don't that we had one boy in the class who was bright and hilarious. And he was very comforting to many of us in many ways. So we were both standing, we went into the restroom, and we were both standing at urinals. Naturally, at that age, the farthest apart you can get from the other boy. Okay. And he said something like, "Oh, that's a relief." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Don't tell the Pope about it or they'll outlaw that too." So I treasured that and realizing that I was taking myself too seriously. All right, we know Jesus practiced extravagant love. The next week is going to show it in the most beautiful way. All the stories, all the unfolding that lead up to the glorious resurrection is a massively extravagant love. And he spent his ministry doing everything he could for everybody, healing lepers and bloody fluxes and blindness and anything you can think of, and suffering the children. So, and he raised hell with the government too, government officials. That takes extravagant love to raise hell with government officials, especially if you're in the mainstream church. Is my life different because I believe in something or someone far greater than myself? Is my life different? If so, how different? Or am I a pleasant secular humanist enjoying my racial and financial privilege, blah, blah, blah. And it's not black and white. But I want my life to be different because there is something greater than me. And that something greater than me is benevolent and loving, someone or something. So, examples. 6 o'clock this morning, I was at a temple with baby monks, and we have some family members there, and we were putting milk and things in their little begging bowls, and I was barely awake, but they were loving it. They were into extravagance. These kids are 8 to 12 years old. Wow, wow, wow. Very un-monk-like. And boy, you should be to an Isan ordination. And then they bring in horses. We think the prince has come to town. Last week, what extravagance the prodigal father? It wasn't about the son. It was about the father. It was about God's unremitting, always forgiving love for the people of Israel, from whom we've descended, and his great abundance and extravagance. Kill a calf, make a dinner, have a party. Last week I was at one of those parties in Nunn. It was a wedding. It started at 8 a.m. and I had to go. Not me. I finished about noon before the, anyway. So, Thich Nhat Hanh, you know who that is? It's a great, I think he's still alive. He got so sick, I think he's alive again. But he wrote teachings on love. He had in the parish, the Vietnamese delegation of the Paris Peace Talks. He's that old. He's in his 90s now. But he's written a whole series of books on love. And in one of them, he teaches a meditation on love that when I worked as a clinical psychologist, I used. I just didn't tell him it was religious. And it's completely silent. You look at your lover, your husband, your wife, your child, anybody, and they don't know you're doing it, and you send messages of love. It starts the first week, I see you. And you just do that. The next week, I see you there, and I see your suffering. Third week, I see you there, I see your suffering, and I'm here for you. That's really extravagant. I mean, that's letting go of self. And you're not doing or saying anything, and it's all inside your head, but I can tell you that people that do it find it transformative. That's an extravagant love. So he was giving this talk and about that, and someone said, but I'm just thinking, what would you call a Zen master? But master, you're celibate and you're like 85 years old, and I mean, how do you do that? He said, oh, it's no problem. I practiced on the taxi cab driver on the way here. So That's extravagant love. Tom Valois, he was in my parish in Roseville, Minnesota, a long time ago. He was a kid, he was 18, he was studying electrical engineering. He now has 7 kids, and he's old. I mean, like 55. And what he has done over a period of 3 years at his parish is he's an electrical engineer, he's a practical guy, out of extravagant love and untold hundreds and hundreds of hours. Let me just get to the result. The result is that the surroundings of the church, all of it, except for the graveyard, all of it is photovoltaic cells. The entire church operation runs on sunshine most of the time and often contributes to the grid. They are almost off the grid with electricity. We've got a school, we've got a big church, we've got a residence. Tom did that, of course, his leadership did that, whole community did that. That was extravagant love as far as I'm concerned. And you think of engineers as being maybe emotionally conservative, I don't know. Anyway, almost done. Mother Teresa. I had a chance to meet Mother Teresa in Cincinnati in 1974. And she was 4'8", but she seemed even shorter at that time. And she was very cross and crabby with the nuns who were with us. And she has a mixed reputation, but gloriously successful in some ways. And she railed against the nuns who were just beginning to change their outfits. She railed against the nuns and says, "You American sisters buy expensive shoes so that they will last and last and last and save the order money." That's not evangelical poverty. That's middle class practicality. Buy cheap shoes that fall apart like poor people. She said a lot more, and I remember most of it because she was that dynamic and compelling. Okay, last one. But this is pretty humble. My friend Diane is a person of abundant but quiet love. Extravagant love. Last week, an 89-year-old Shirtel relative whom she hadn't seen for years died in Hackensack, Minnesota, about 8 hours from Minneapolis, where she lives. Okay. So she said, "Well, I should really go up there and support the family." And we're emailing. And they said, "You know the family?" I said, "Not really." I said, "So I'm going to get my brother." The brother is a very crabby person, especially to sit in a car with for 8 hours, negative about everything, kind of polarized. So she said, "Yeah, I'm going to get my brother to sleep for a while." So she drove up there 8 hours, funeral, came back. So 10 million excuses why she needn't have done that. That is a love that liberates, not limits. Okay. So Lent is about preparation, an opening, not so much just about giving up strawberries. You know, it's about a journey of faith. And the stories about what Jesus did and what Jesus said that opens us up, that I hope will open me up to go a little farther, to be a little more extravagant, to be a little more generous, to be a little more available when someone asks me to do something or invites me somewhere. My answer should almost always, unless it's sinful or something, be yes. Yes. Yeah. The older I get, the less I want to say what? Yes, but the more I need to say yes. Yes to life, empty the pockets of my life, empty my heart. Last phrase. There's also many jais in the Thai language, you know. Jai di, jai ron, jai everything. My favorite is jai, nam jai actually. So nam jai. Nam is water, but really means liquid, the liquid heart. Flowing back and forth, flowing back and forth. Often used to describe extravagant love.